There comes a point where holding on does nothing but hurt you. You replay the memories, you analyze every word, you wonder if things could have been different, and all it does is keep you tied to someone who has already shown you they don't deserve your energy. Forgetting him forever isn't about being cold or heartless. It's about choosing freedom over chains. It's about saying, I refuse to let someone who didn't value me continue to live rent-free in my mind. When you act like you never knew him, you strip away his power, you reclaim your peace, and you finally create the space for the life and love you actually deserve. This isn't about punishing him, it's about liberating you. Because the moment you forget him, completely and unapologetically, is the moment you remember who you truly are. When we hold on to someone who hurt us, most of the time we're not really holding on to them. We're holding on to the version of them we built in our imagination. The version who cared more than they actually did, who loved us deeper than they really could, who showed us a glimpse of potential that we kept hoping would eventually become reality. That fantasy is what keeps us stuck, because when you're trying to forget someone, it isn't just the person you're letting go of, it's the dream you once had with them. That's why it feels so hard. It's not the day-to-day reality you're grieving. It's the hope you kept alive long after they stopped showing up for you. To forget him forever, you have to strip away the illusion. Stop replaying the highlight reel and start watching the raw footage. Stop romanticizing the rare good moments while conveniently ignoring the constant neglect, the inconsistency, or the way you felt more insecure than cherished. The truth is, if he truly lived up to the version of him you created in your head, you wouldn't be here right now trying to forget him. You wouldn't be wondering why he didn't stay, or why he didn't fight harder, or why he didn't value you the way you deserved. Reality doesn't need excuses. It doesn't need you to justify or explain it away. Reality just is, and the reality is he wasn't enough, not because you weren't worthy, but because he wasn't willing. When you begin to see him clearly, without the lens of fantasy, you realize something powerful. There's nothing left to miss. You thought you were losing a soulmate, but you were only losing someone who never fully showed up. You thought you were giving up on the best thing you'd ever have, but in truth, the best thing never even had a chance to start, because he didn't rise to meet you. The fantasy was intoxicating because it kept you hoping, and hope kept you invested long after he stopped earning your effort. Once you dismantle that fantasy, the spell breaks. Suddenly, forgetting him doesn't feel like erasing love. It feels like waking up from a dream that was never real in the first place. The human mind has a way of filling in the blanks, especially when we want something badly. We ignore the red flags and focus on the good memories because they're easier to hold onto. But here's the problem. Those good moments were not the whole story. They were fragments, and fragments don't sustain a relationship. When you cling to fragments, you build a fantasy. And when you build a fantasy, you end up mourning something that never actually existed. That's why moving on feels impossible, because you're not grieving him. You're grieving the illusion of him. But the moment you separate the two, everything changes. So, if you want to forget him forever, remind yourself of the truth. He wasn't consistent. He didn't prioritize you. He didn't show up in the ways that matter most. That's who he really was. And the reality is, if he couldn't be the man you needed when he had you, he doesn't deserve to be remembered now that he's gone. Free yourself by refusing to hold onto the version of him that only lived in your imagination. Because once the fantasy dissolves, so does the attachment. And once the attachment is gone, forgetting him doesn't just become possible, it becomes inevitable. Forgetting someone isn't just about removing them from your life physically. It's about removing them from your mind emotionally. And the truth is, the hardest part of moving on is not what they did, but what lingers afterward, the residue. The texts you reread, the photos you scroll back to, the The social media updates you accidentally. Check the songs that remind you of him, the little rituals you created together that still echo in your daily life. Every one of these is like a string connecting you to him, and every time you pull on that string, you reignite the connection you're trying to kill. If you want to forget him forever, you have to cut off that residue, every last piece of it. Think of your heart like a room. You can say he's no longer welcome, but if his things are still scattered everywhere, his presence still haunts you. That hoodie you keep in your drawer, that playlist that feels like a time capsule, the photo you refuse to delete just in case. Those are emotional anchors. They keep you tied to a story that's already ended. You can't tell yourself you're ready to move on while keeping souvenirs of the past. Those souvenirs don't just remind you of him, they trick your brain into feeling like he's still part of your present. And as long as you allow those traces to live in your world, forgetting him is impossible. Cutting off emotional residue is about creating clean breaks. Delete the photos, block or unfollow him on social media, not because you're bitter, but because you need peace. Stop replaying conversations in your head, trying to figure out what he meant or what you should have said differently. That kind of rumination keeps you trapped in the past. When your mind starts drifting to him, interrupt it, redirect it, give yourself a new story to focus on, whether it's your goals, your growth, or the life you're building without him. Because forgetting him is less about pushing him out and more about filling the space he once occupied with something far more meaningful. And here's the truth. He doesn't deserve to live in your head rent-free. Every time you replay a memory, stalk his social media, or wonder what he's doing now, you're feeding him energy he hasn't earned. Energy that should be fueling you, your healing, your dreams. That's the cost of residue. It drains you while giving him power he doesn't even know he has. But when you cut off the residue, you cut off the supply. Suddenly, he fades. The thoughts stop showing up as often. The feelings weaken, and you begin to experience the kind of freedom you thought you'd never feel again. Of course, cutting residue isn't always easy because those pieces feel comforting. That old text thread, it makes you feel connected. That Instagram profile, it gives you a sense of what he's up to. But here's the harsh truth. Comfort isn't healing. Comfort is a trap. Healing happens when you remove the things that hurt you in the long run, even if they soothe you in the short term. Deleting the reminders may sting for a moment, but every second afterward, you're lighter, stronger, freer. So, if you're serious about forgetting him forever, don't just cut him out of your life, cut out everything that keeps him alive in your memory. Clear the room, empty the shelves, stop giving oxygen to a fire that should have burned out long ago. Because once the residue is gone, his hold on you is gone too. And when that grip finally breaks, forgetting him won't just be a choice. It will be your natural state of being. Forgetting someone forever is not just about erasing the past. It's about creating a future so compelling that the past no longer has a grip on you. The mind struggles to let go when there's nothing to replace what it lost. That's why so many people end up circling back, reopening old doors, or clinging to faded connections they haven't built something strong enough ahead of them to walk toward. If you truly want to forget him like you never knew him, you have to consciously replace him with your future. You don't leave a void. You fill it with vision, purpose, and experiences that remind you every day that your life is bigger than what you lost. Every time your mind drifts back to him, you have a choice. You can replay the memories, the what-ifs, the unanswered questions, or you can use that energy to fuel what's next. Instead of obsessing over why he didn't see your value, you pour yourself into becoming someone who doesn't even need his validation. Instead of checking his social media to see what he's doing, you invest in doing something that excites you, whether that's starting a new project, taking on a challenge, or exploring a passion you neglected while you were with him. The more your future expands, the smaller he becomes. Think about this. When someone leaves your life, they leave behind both pain and space. Most people focus only on the pain, but it's the space that's the real gift. That empty space is room for growth, for self-discovery, for opportunities you wouldn't have had if you were still tied to him. Instead of letting that space stay empty and haunted by his memory, you fill it with purpose. You create a future so meaningful that looking back feels unnecessary. It's not about erasing him, it's about making him irrelevant, because your life has moved far beyond where he left it. And here's the irony: when you replace him with your future, forgetting him doesn't feel forced. You don't wake up every day reminding yourself, "I need to stop thinking about him." Instead, you wake up excited about what's ahead, and naturally, your brain no longer wastes time dwelling on someone who has no role in your new story. The human mind isn't wired to stay stuck when it has something greater to chase. Give it a bigger dream, and the old attachment dissolves. Building that future doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be small shifts, creating new routines that have nothing to do with him, connecting with new people who expand your perspective, exploring places you've never been, or learning skills that bring you confidence. Each small step plants your focus in tomorrow instead of yesterday. Over time, those small steps add up to a future that excites you so much, you forget to look back. Here's what's powerful. Replacing him with your future is the ultimate proof that he didn't define you. It shows that while he may have been part of your past, he has no claim over your direction. He doesn't get to write your story, you do. And the best part, by focusing forward, you also take back control, because forgetting someone is not about what they do, it's about where you decide to put your energy. If that energy is invested in your future, he fades into the background like a character who no longer matters in the plot. So, instead of trying to erase him with force, replace him with purpose. Redirect the energy you once gave him into becoming the best version of yourself. Let your goals, your passions, your dreams be the new obsession. Because when your future becomes bigger than your past, forgetting him won't feel like a battle. It will feel like freedom. There's a certain power in silence that no words can ever compete with. When you've been hurt, the natural instinct is to demand answers, to seek closure, to confront him with all the things you wish he understood. You want to say, "Do you realize what you lost? Do you know how much I gave? Do you understand how badly you treated me?" But the truth is, words rarely change anyone. If he didn't value you when he had you, no perfectly crafted speech will suddenly wake him up. What does, however, is silence. Silence communicates something far louder than explanations ever could. You've moved on, you no longer need him, and he has lost access to your world. Silence is powerful because it removes the one thing his ego thrives on: attention. Whether it's love, anger, or even pain, when you keep responding, you keep feeding the connection. You may think you're showing strength by confronting him or demanding acknowledgement, but in reality, you're still making him central to your energy. Silence, on the other hand, removes the stage. It strips him of the spotlight. It shows him that you are not interested in playing the game anymore. That absence becomes its own presence, louder, sharper, and far more unforgettable than anything you could have said. Think about the times in your life when someone suddenly went quiet, the unanswered message, the phone that stopped ringing. The lack of response, didn't it drive you crazy wondering what they were thinking? Silence makes people fill in the blanks, and those blanks are often harsher than anything you could have told them directly. When you stop explaining, stop arguing, stop showing that you care what he does or thinks, he's left with the uncomfortable reality that you've disengaged. And for someone who took you for granted, that sudden loss of access is devastating. Silence also protects your dignity. Every time you resist the urge to explain yourself, to justify why you left, or to respond to his attempts to pull you back in, you're reminding yourself that your worth isn't up for negotiation. Closure doesn't come from him, it comes from you deciding, I don't need his answers to move on. That kind of self-assurance is what truly forgets someone, not because you're forcing yourself to, but because you've built such strong boundaries that his existence no longer penetrates your peace. Of course, silence isn't easy at first. It feels unnatural to cut off the conversations, to stop checking his updates, to resist firing back when he reaches out. But silence is like a muscle. The more you practice it, the stronger it gets. And once you experience its power, you realize that saying nothing is often the loudest message of all. It's not indifference in the beginning, it's discipline, but over time, that discipline turns into genuine detachment. You stop needing to prove a point because the lack of communication proves it for you, and here's the irony, when you stop speaking, that's when he starts listening. Your silence forces him to sit with the consequences of his actions. He may replay the past, wonder what you're doing, or finally realize the value you brought into his life. But by then, it won't matter, because silence isn't about teaching him a lesson. It's about protecting your peace. The bonus is that, in protecting your peace, you deliver the most powerful lesson without even trying. So if you want to forget him like you never knew him, embrace silence. Don't chase closure. Don't engage in drama. Don't give him the satisfaction of knowing he still occupies space in your mind. Your silence will say everything your words never could. And in that silence, you'll discover freedom not because he gave it to you, but because you took it back. One of the biggest reasons people struggle to forget someone is because, over time, their identity became entangled with that person. You stopped seeing yourself as just you. You began to see yourself as you with him. Your routines, your choices, your happiness were often built around his presence. So when he's gone, it feels like part of you is missing. That's the illusion you have to shatter, because the truth is, he was never the definition of your worth. Forgetting him forever means remembering who you are without him and rebuilding an identity that has nothing to do with him at all. When you were with him, maybe you adapted your life to fit his. You shifted your schedule, your habits, or even your dreams to accommodate his. You made space for him in your world, sometimes at the expense of yourself. And that's why the void feels so heavy now, because you gave away too much of your identity while he was around. But the beauty of this moment is that you now have the chance to reclaim it. You get to rediscover the parts of yourself that got buried beneath the relationship, and you get to create new ones that never depended on him in the first place. Building an identity without him means saying yes to the things you always wanted but never pursued. It could be as small as a hobby you let go of because he didn't care about it, or as big as a dream you pushed aside because it didn't fit into the relationship. Now is your chance to bring those things back. Every time you invest in something that belongs only to you, you're reminding yourself that your life was never defined by his presence, it was only influenced by it. And now that influence is gone, you're free to build something authentic. It also means creating new routines and experiences that have nothing to do with him. Maybe you used to go to the same restaurants, watch the same shows, or take the same routes that remind you of him. Change it up. Create new associations. When you fill your life with fresh places, fresh people, and fresh experiences, you overwrite the old memories. You begin to see yourself as a whole, independent person again, not someone living in the shadow of who he was. And here's the secret. When you rebuild your identity, you make him irrelevant. He no longer holds the power of being the person who defined you. Because the truth is, he didn't define you. You just allowed yourself to forget who you were. By building yourself up again, you break that illusion. He becomes just a chapter in your story, not the headline, and once you see him that way, forgetting him isn't a battle, it's the natural result of outgrowing him. The more you grow into yourself, the less you even think about him, because suddenly you're not asking, "Who was I with him?" You're asking, "Who am I now without him?" And that question is exciting because the answers lead you into freedom. They push you toward new passions, new connections, and new strength. And as those things take root, he fades like a distant memory, unimportant to the person you've become. So if you want to forget him forever, stop looking at the past for answers. Start building the future with an identity that is whole, strong, and unapologetically yours. Because the moment you realize your life doesn't need him in it to be meaningful is the moment you finally let him go, not just from your world, but from your heart. The temptation when someone takes you for granted is to want them to feel the pain you felt. You want them to know what it's like to be ignored, dismissed, undervalued. You want them to regret ever treating you the way they did. But the truth is, the more you chase that outcome, the more you stay tied to them. Because seeking revenge or validation still keeps you emotionally invested. The real power lies in letting go completely, forgetting him as if he never existed, and allowing life itself, karma, to handle what you don't need to. Karma isn't some mystical punishment you wait around for. It's the natural law of consequences. People who take good things for granted always end up learning the hard way what happens when those good things disappear. He may not realize it today, but one day he'll feel it. The absence of your love, the loss of your presence, the emptiness that comes from knowing he had something real and chose not to value it. And the beauty is, you don't have to orchestrate that lesson. Life will do it for you. By trying to control how or when he regrets losing you, you keep yourself entangled. You're still giving him energy, attention, and significance in your life. But when you step back, when you stop watching, when you act as though he never mattered, you create the space for karma to unfold naturally. And when it does, it always hits harder than anything you could have planned. Because nothing stings more than realizing you've lost something permanently, especially when you didn't think it could ever go away. This is why forgetting him forever is the ultimate act of strength. It's not about indifference in the beginning, it's about discipline. You train yourself to stop checking on him, to stop wondering if he's sorry, to stop imagining him realizing your worth. And over time, that discipline becomes genuine detachment. And once you're detached, you no longer care whether he regrets it or not. That's when karma has its sharpest edge, because regret always hits when you least expect it, and when the person you wronged no longer cares enough to notice. And here's the deeper truth. Karma isn't just about him, it's about you too. When you let go of resentment, you free yourself. You stop carrying his weight, his mistakes, his energy. You begin to attract better people and experiences because you're no longer tied down by the need to prove anything to him. Forgetting him is not just punishment for him, it's liberation for you. You win by living better, by building stronger, by loving yourself more fiercely than he ever could. That's the kind of life that karma rewards, so don't worry about when or how he'll regret losing you. Don't wait for the day he shows up with an apology. Don't sit around hoping life will teach him the lesson you couldn't. Instead, walk away with your head high and let the silence, the absence, and the finality of your decision speak louder than any revenge could. Because karma always finds its way, and the most powerful way to forget him forever is to trust that truth and move forward as though he never mattered. In the end, you don't need to make him regret, you just need to forget. And when you do, his regret will come, not because you forced it, but because life always circles back to remind people of the value they once overlooked. And by then, you'll be so far ahead, so free and so happy, that his regret won't even register in your world. When it comes down to it, forgetting him forever isn't really about him. It's about you. It's about reclaiming your power, your peace, and your energy. It's about refusing to let someone who didn't value you continue to hold space in your life or in your mind. Because the longer you hold onto the idea of what he did, or the hope that he'll someday wake up and regret it, the longer you keep yourself stuck in his shadow. The real win is not when he regrets losing you, it's when you no longer care if he does. The real strength is walking away so completely, so confidently, that it feels as though he never existed. That's when you know you've truly healed, and that's when karma does what karma always does. It shows up not on your timeline, but on life's timeline. And when it hits, it always hits where the ego is most fragile, but you won't be there waiting for it. You'll be living your life, smiling, thriving, surrounded by people who see your worth and never take it for granted. His regret may come, but by then you'll be so far ahead that it won't even matter. Because the best revenge isn't proving him wrong, it's proving yourself right by building the life and love you deserve. So forget him forever, erase his hold on your story, step into a new chapter where your happiness no longer depends on who stayed, who left, or who failed to see your value. Because the moment you do, you don't just move on, you rise above. And that's a kind of power no ego, no regret, no apology can ever touch.